Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and I decided to go live earlier tonight because the game is on YouTube, and I'm just thinking, technologically speaking, I'm guessing that YouTube is going to put a lot of their forces into the Kansas City Chiefs facing off with the Los Angeles Chargers. So why not go a little bit early on YouTube to, I don't know, beat whatever it is that they'll have to do. But also, I'm going to tell you the truth. I figured a lot of you are going to want to watch the game. I want to watch the game as well. So let's talk now on this afternoon on a Friday. And also, very good timing for me because not too long ago, my friend Tyler Dunn, who writes the Go Long newsletter, formerly of Bleacher Report, just dropped a massive article about Caleb Williams and the dysfunction that happened behind the scenes. So I am going to read you some of that shortly. Also, I've got a really fun discussion with Kalyn of ESPN about the 2024 draft class. So, of course, we do talk some Caleb Williams, but also, JJ McCarthy, the rest of the class, how we think it's going to play out throughout this season. But we got to start with the biggest Vikings news of the day, which is that after not practicing yesterday in what Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune said was a scheduled day off, Christian Darrisaw was a full participant in practice today for the Minnesota Vikings. What does that mean for his chances of playing on Monday night? Well, it would mean to me that it's not off the table from a full participation in practice. And yesterday, when he didn't practice at all, my thought was that's not great for the potential of him playing on Monday night because you don't want to see any player who you're looking at what his status is going to be miss an entire practice and not participate at all. But to come back today, full participation, then that really puts it on tomorrow's practice on Saturday. Can he come back from a full practice today, practice again tomorrow, and then be there at left tackle for Monday Night Football? There is also the option, and you don't see it very often, of a pitch count. Now, that actually did happen once with Christian Darrisaw before in his career. If you go back to his rookie year, he missed almost all of training camp as a rookie. And then when he finally got healthy, I think it was week 4 and good to go, but he didn't play the whole game. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Rashad Hill who started the game. And then it was after that, Christian Darrisaw coming in and playing the rest of the game. And then he got his first start the next week. Normally with offensive lines, you really don't want to do that all too often where you've got a guy rotating in or out. You almost never see that, or even someone playing half the game. But even if they could get anything out of Christian Darrisaw, that is an upgrade against Chicago. And the drop off is enormous. I mean, no disrespect to Justin School, who is a veteran player and he's played in the NFL before. He's been out there. It wouldn't be his first time. We're talking about one of the best players in the entire league, not only from a pass protection perspective in JJ McCarthy's first start, which seems like a relatively big deal. But also this team wants to run the football, and it changed enormously their ability to run the ball last year without Christian Darrisaw. So there's a big difference, not just in terms of how safe JJ McCarthy feels, but the schematic trickle down. This was something that Kevin O'Connell talked about a lot last year of schematically, just the fact that you don't have to help Christian Darrisaw, so you can give help somewhere else. Maybe that's on the right side to battle against Montez Sweat for Brian O'Neill. Maybe that's even the middle with Donovan Jackson, where if you put in, well, CJ Ham isn't in there. It's a little harder, but maybe you can shift protection a little bit or double team a little bit because you know you don't have to give extra help to Christian Darrisaw. So tomorrow's practice will be very telling toward that, if I had to guess, because he has practiced this week, that we will likely get a designation on him that questionable, and then we'll find out, when we get to game day. But this was a big step for Christian Darrisaw in his ACL recovery to actually have a game day full practice for the first time since he was injured in the middle of the season last year against the Los Angeles Rams. And it's a swing player for this game to be out there. I mean, we've talked about them wanting to potentially run the ball, wanting to control the clock, wanting to control possession. This is a guy who does it. And you saw last year when he was not out there, they just could not run the football the same to the edges without Christian Darrisaw. So that will be big to watch for tomorrow. Also on the injury report, Harrison Smith was a limited participant today in practice, and once again sort of gives some hope to the idea that Harrison Smith could potentially play on Monday. And he has been out. He's been dealing with a health issue, and him not practicing the other day did make you think, oh man, missing this much time, that's going to be pretty tough for him to get ramped back up. But I think the same thing applies, and it's actually a lot easier for a safety to not have to, play all the snaps. Though Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell have sort of talked about a little bit in the past of Harrison Smith, and well, KOC wants to take him off the field a little bit, and Brian Flores is like, nah, I don't think we will. I think he's going to play 1,000 snaps. But in this instance, if he's not at full strength but can still contribute, there maybe is a pitch count scenario for Harrison Smith. That's another one we'll have to wait and see, but more progress from a health perspective for the Minnesota Vikings. And on the other side, Jalen Johnson for the last 2 days has been a limited participant for the Chicago Bears. And that is an enormous deal. We've discussed his backup being a former Viking that never played, Nashawn Wright. We've talked about that a little bit, but Jalen Johnson's also one of the best in the NFL. And if there's anybody in this division now, when we look around the corners, I think it'd be Jalen Johnson and maybe DJ Reed would be the only guys you would talk about going into a game saying Justin Jefferson versus that guy could be one heck of a matchup. And are they going to move Jalen Johnson around with Justin Jefferson? How are they going to handle it? So he's limited. If he ends up playing, still might not be at 100%, might not be at full strength to go up against Justin Jefferson, and certainly a potential edge there for the Minnesota Vikings. But the fact that it drops off from Jalen Johnson all the way down to Nashawn Wright, who's barely played in the NFL before, that is an enormous difference in this game. So the health going into week one for some very important players here maybe holds some keys to what this game ends up being on Monday night. So that's just kind of the update right there on the things we know. We were not out there today, but we will be tomorrow to talk to Kevin O'Connell to get that final injury report and his last comments in the last open locker room before we actually go to Chicago and the Minnesota Vikings play some football. But with Jalen Johnson potentially not playing in this game, the FanDuel question of the day, Justin Jefferson's over-under is 77.5 yards. With Jalen Johnson still limited in practice, how many yards for Justin Jefferson do you expect? Also, if you're just jumping in here, questions, comments, thoughts, of course, are very welcome. Coming up a little later in the show is Kalyn from ESPN. We talked earlier yesterday, so this was before Tyler Dunn's Bombshell article came out, and I kind of want to get right to that. I thought, well, man, I'm going to talk a lot about the offensive line with Darrisaw and the, what we're looking for and so forth. But questions, comments, and thoughts, I am very interested in knowing. Traveler has 115 yards for Justin Jefferson. I think that this could be a huge game for him, but also we know that last year the Chicago Bears decided to just sell out. It's a different defensive coordinator, though. How are they going to handle it? Are they going to sell out? Are they going to say, let somebody else beat us? But what the Vikings have done in the past is they actually have had other people beat them. When the Bears are trying to do everything they can against Justin Jefferson. Last year it was Jordan Addison. Last year was TJ Hawkinson. So it wouldn't be actually all that unusual for someone else for the Vikings to beat the Chicago Bears. It's kind of been the story since Kevin O'Connell has been the head coach. But there was a few ugly Vikings-Bears games, but for the most part, it hasn't been the house of horrors as it was so much before, even in the Mike Zimmer era a lot of times, and before that. I shot you 99. Any glimpses of Carson Wentz? Looks like anything better than Howell. Well, the big difference between now and during training camp is during training camp, we get to watch the entire practice. And during the season, we don't. We watch the warm-ups and individual drills, and then we go back inside after that. So, I mean, warm-ups, Carson Wentz, big, large guy, throws the ball around. I mean, look, Carson Wentz is a much, much, much more accomplished quarterback than Sam Howell. If he has to play, I think you fully believe that Carson Wentz, even right away here, can come in and do a decent enough job to get them through it. With Sam Howell, there was no belief in that whatsoever. But we have a lot to look at with Carson Wentz, where he's performed well in the NFL. Where with Sam Howell, there was a couple games in 2023 where he was decent, if not good, and everything else sample size with him has just been straight up bad. So I think there's a lot of confidence in Carson Wentz as a backup quarterback. But I got to get to this article from Tyler Dunn. So this just came out today. Go Long TD is his website. If you don't know Tyler, long form writer, used to work for Bleacher Report. We became friends because he worked for the Buffalo News for a while back in Buffalo when I was there, and helped him start Go Long TD after I started Purple Insider, kind of a similar story. And he's written some real incredible bombshells over the last couple of years with this site of his, including maybe a memorable Sean McDermott story. If you guys recall, I won't go through the details of that one, but that was out there last year. And there's been a few Aaron Rodgers pieces and something on the Cowboys that was prescient for sure with Jerry Jones and how things were run with the Cowboys. Well, he dug deep over the last few months into Caleb Williams. So I want to show you guys some of this article and go over to Go Long TD if you want to read the entire thing. And I would highly suggest becoming a subscriber to that for great NFL writing. But I'll show you on the screen here. So this just dropped today. And I'm just going to start at the top of the article and read you a few things that stuck out to me. I'm not going to read the entire article, but here's a few things that really stood out to me from Tyler's piece. So he starts it out with OTAs at the beginning of the Caleb Williams era in Chicago. And Tyler writes, OTAs arrived. Coaches unwrap this gift from the football gods who have cursed this organization for so long. And yikes. Williams struggled to execute elementary tasks. Every day was a new disaster. Early that spring, the Bears changed the snap count to appease Williams. Instead of using a combination of colors and numbers like every other NFL team, the Bears reverted to a ready, set, go straight out of JV football because that's what the quarterback requested. Aside from the obvious on-field consequences of defenders being able to tee off, the Bears were establishing a troubling precedent in allowing a rookie to tell them exactly what to do. Veterans couldn't believe it. Are you bleeping me? One receiver coach asked. Let's see. He says, when a play call was sent in, Williams would stare at his wristband for a painful length of time, like it was another language, another coach said. Williams verbalized the call in the huddle. It was wrong half the time, and then the players would be lined up wrong all over the field. Verbiage was truncated, huddling was minimized, the playbook dumbed down, and the Bears' offense devolved into an exercise of trial and error to fit whatever the USC quarterback or rookie demanded, all of which would have been manageable if Williams was willing to work. He was not. So that's, wow, like hits you right in the face off the beginning. So there's another couple of parts that I want to highlight because, I mean, that's right from the beginning, Caleb Williams running the organization last year. Let's see. Okay. Tyler writes, Ben Johnson and his new staff now stare down the barrel of more disorder than they anticipated. The quarterback he inherits is not the same species of football junkie. Former Bears coaches cannot grin and bear it. No doubt it's part of the job taking bullets for your players, but when one of those players, in their estimation, so blatantly lies about how he was coached, they feel no choice but to shed light on what transpired behind closed doors. In Seth Wickersham's upcoming book, American Kings, Williams told his father that he wasn't getting any help from the staff. Quote, no one tells me what to watch, the QB said. I just turn it on. When this quote went viral, I, meaning Tyler, was actually on the phone with one former Bears offensive assistant. Now that's some timing. He read it aloud and called it, quote, evil on Williams' part to describe last season in such a manner. Quote, do you think that we're not going to meet with this kid and teach him bleep? The coach said. Who would do that? It's bleeping crazy. I don't get it. You think that we want to be bad? It makes me bleeping sick. Another coach on offense calls Williams' complaint BS. For him to say that, that guy knows what the hell happened. Another coach says the entire staff didn't merely show up in Chicago and forget how to coach. All have prepared players their entire lives. All have been around top quarterbacks before, and this player's work ethic was the worst that most had ever seen. Quote, any narrative surrounding that film, if people buy into it, I have some beachfront property in Idaho that I want to sell them. It continues to go on. I'll read you one more section that was rather interesting here about how much Caleb Williams was coddled, according to Tyler Dunn's deep investigative piece here. This section is called Coddling Caleb. He rarely ever turned the tablet on. That was obvious. The Bears can see how much all the players watch film on their devices away from the facility, which begs one question. What exactly did the quarterback spend his idle time? How exactly did he spend his idle time? One Bears coach sneers. That's a good question for John Jackson III. The best place to start is with a player that most NFL fans have never heard of in their lives. Jackson was not amongst the 257 players selected in the 2024 draft, or even one of the 15 or so UDFA free agent signings that each team scoops up with those manic hours afterward, mainly because he's not a talented football player. The wide receiver caught 5 passes in 4 seasons at USC, totaling a meager 267 yards in his final collegiate season on a 2-10 Nevada team. He scored 0 touchdowns in 51 games. The good news for Jackson was that his best friend is Caleb Williams, and the Bears GM was determined to keep his new quarterback smiling. After participating in a rookie tryout camp basis, Jackson was given a spot on the 90-man roster and then ate up a practice squad spot all season long. When I asked the GM for another team if Jackson was on their radar at any point, he laughs and assures me it is not normal for a team to stash a quarterback's buddy on the practice squad. Bears coaches saw a receiver with no business in the NFL. We all knew why this dude was on the team, says one coach. He couldn't play a lick. And I like the dude, but that's the lengths they did to kiss Caleb's ass. And we kissed his ass from day one. Kind of goes on to compare him down here a little bit later about Williams acting like he was a movie star and on and on and on. As you can see, maybe by the side of the screen there, I have just started reading that article. And I mean, that is some really remarkable reporting directly from the coaches for the Chicago Bears for last year. And wow, welcome to 2025, Caleb Williams. You know what you don't want to see if you're a player in the NFL or an organization in the NFL is Tyler Dunn dropping a piece about your team right before you play. That is most of the time. I'm making fun. Tyler writes a lot of very positive articles as well. I've been a subscriber for years, but you don't want this one. You don't want the bombshell dropping on you right before the season starts. My take on his reporting here is that, Tyler has an incredible ability to, I think, unearth things that maybe were kept behind closed doors. Like, that's his talent as a reporter. And I also think that he has a great instinct for there was something more going on there. And we've talked about this on the show, I think quite a bit, is that after you've done this for a while and you've seen many coaches succeed and many players fail, and you see something like last year, and Tyler mentions it in the piece about Shane Waldron. And I think he wrote, let me go find this about Waldron, because he wrote something about Shane Waldron and how like Waldron may have tried too hard and couldn't get through to Caleb Williams, and they were trying as hard as they could. The quote is Shane tried. Shane, I thought he went too far to try. The quote is, Shane went overboard trying to help him. One Bears assistant who watched closely. Shane tried to, well, this is what they did at USC. In my mind, looking at it, it's the NFL. Who gives a bleep what they did at USC? He was bending over backwards to try and figure out the best way to reach him. And that was what never really added up to me when it came to the Caleb Williams and Shane Waldron it's not like this guy had never coached in the NFL before. It's not like he'd never had success before. And then all of a sudden, he was the entire reason. And anytime a coach gets blamed as the entire reason that something went wrong, for me, the antennas go up, because that is very rarely the case, that an offensive coordinator is the entire reason that something was going wrong. I mean, even look at John DeFilippo, for example, in Minnesota, where, and Tyler did one of these pieces a couple of years ago on Mike Zimmer, and John DeFilippo was at the center of that, of some of Mike Zimmer's dysfunction. But when you look at that situation, was DeFilippo the greatest offensive coordinator? Probably not. And maybe didn't have the best scheme for Kirk Cousins. But all the dysfunction and having Mike Zimmer undermining him constantly was a major factor for this. And so I think about a similar situation where it's a team that seemed to think that they were getting the generational player, and he acted like he was the generational player, and yet the results were not matching up. And in a rational world, what you would do with a player that was that far behind, and this is why Kevin O'Connell was adamant last year, even before JJ McCarthy got hurt, that they weren't going to play him until he was completely and fully ready to play. And a lot of this to me sounds like with Caleb Williams, that last year he was just nowhere near ready to play. And so rather than say, okay, this guy can't play right now, we've got to develop him for a year, that's where the Chicago Bears went way wrong. But it's also not possible for a guy like Caleb Williams, if he's coming in as a rock star and he's coming in with all these demands as the number one pick, and then you give him everything that he wants rather than making him earn it. I mean, I think that it's probably everybody's fault here. And I think, this is a 3-part series from Tyler, by the way. Like, there's a lot to be said about this. This was just part 1 of this article, but boy, he hits you pretty darn hard right from the outset of this article. But I think when you read that, you're like, the coaches were expecting Peyton Manning. They did not get Peyton Manning. They got an entitled player who thought that he could just step in and run the NFL the same way that he did in college, which is not that uncommon, by the way. And there was nobody there who had even the authority or cachet to say, we need a different quarterback to start the season, and we need to develop him, and he needs to check X number of boxes before he's allowed to start in the NFL, because he was the franchise as soon as he got there. And it sounds like the coaching staff felt like they had to just do whatever he wanted them to do, because they were going to get fired if they didn't. But naturally, they got fired anyway because of the results. So the big question really for Ben Johnson now in Chicago is, with all of his coaching, and if you saw my conversation with Courtney Cronin, that's up now on YouTube. If you saw that, it sounds like what Ben Johnson has been doing is the exact opposite of all of this stuff, where they were trying to change how they do things, change their system, tweak their system, build it around his strengths, build it around how he was doing it in college. And I think that the letting the tail wag the dog was probably not the way to handle Caleb Williams. But then again, if Caleb Williams was going to go to Seth Wickersham and tell him that it was all the coach's fault, and I never bought that for a second, by the way, as far as the watching film. I mean, yes, players need to they need to learn how to watch film. But look at JJ McCarthy. I mean, he was in the building last year. He's meeting with Kevin O'Connell. He's got other quarterbacks around him. He's on a weekly basis, like, scouting the defense and things like that. What? I mean, this is something that you should be doing on your own all the time. I mean, these quarterbacks, I think it was Sam Darnold last year talked about having maybe it was his girlfriend read him a play in his apartment, and then he would do the footwork. And then he was telling JJ McCarthy, like, that's how you do it. Like, there's other quarterbacks there who had played football before, but maybe they didn't want anyone challenging him at all on anything that he did. So they decided to dumb it down for him. This also does reflect badly, and some of you are saying this, and I agree. This also reflects really badly on them as well, because it seems like they just tiptoed around Caleb Williams and acted like, okay, yes, sir, we'll just do it your way. And we'll just run your USC offense and we'll just run your Mickey Mouse cadence and we'll just do all this stuff when they really should have just been coaching him the same way you would coach an NFL quarterback. And in my mind, it's, yeah, I understand why you're afraid of losing him or afraid of the ownership, the general manager, hearing his complaints and then getting fired. But coaching him as if he was the one in charge was never going to work. You're the coaches. You know so much more about this. So that relationship seemed incredibly dysfunctional. But if Williams doesn't want to put in the work, and there's a good story actually involving John DeFilippo that Kirk Morrison, former NFL linebacker, told about Jamarcus Russell, where John DeFilippo, this is in the DVD days, young folk, he had put together a DVD of a bunch of plays, or at least he said that he did, and he gave them to Jamarcus Russell and said, hey, go home and watch these, and then let me know tomorrow if you're comfortable with these 10 plays. So Jamarcus comes back, says, oh, I'm good. I'm good with all that. It's all good. All 10 plays are good. And I'm paraphrasing some of the story's details, but it's basically the story. The DVD was blank. Like, it didn't have anything on it. He should have gotten a call from Jamarcus saying the DVD's not working or whatever. But that was back before you could test how often someone was logging in. And then even the idea, now look, I think it's a little more common than he made it sound to have friends of players, but usually those players have to be like to the level. So, just for example, everybody liked Tristan Jackson, very popular guy. Everyone was friends with him. Tristan Jackson could play though. I mean, not a guy, John Jackson III, who's just his buddy who he wants on the team. I mean, some of that is just absolutely crazy. And this also goes to having a coach in Chicago that was on the hot seat to start with Caleb Williams, because he has no authority whatsoever over Caleb Williams, knowing he's beginning in a position of, if I don't do what he wants us to do, then I'm getting canned. And that's exactly what happened. It also tells you that, Kevin O'Connell has kind of made this thing look a little bit on the easy side with quarterbacks. Now we're going to find out with JJ McCarthy, but I think that O'Connell, in the way that he's able to communicate with quarterbacks, get them to buy in. But another part of it too is they drafted a guy who was going to buy in. This is why you draft JJ McCarthy. I mean, I've said this probably that sentence a bunch of times over different things of the way he played in the preseason game. Was it miraculous? No, but he got rid of the football and he ran the operation, and we sound foolish saying it like he ran the operation, guys. He got the call in, but then you hear that story and you're like, yeah, Caleb Williams couldn't get the call in, couldn't run the plays, couldn't learn the offense. This stuff's really hard. This stuff takes a ton of work. There's a story in Bruce Arians' book where Bruce talks about how when they drafted Peyton Manning, they got him this projector for his house and they got him the film. And by the time he got to OTAs after rookie minicamp, he already knew the offense better than some of the wide receivers who had been in the offense, because that's Peyton Manning, because he's a psycho work ethic guy. Again, that's why you draft JJ McCarthy. Not because he was the tallest or that he threw the ball as far or whatever as Caleb Williams, but you do it because you know that he's going to buy into what you're coaching. And if you do that, it's got you almost all the way there. This is how there's a lot of quarterbacks who have succeeded because they just do what they are asked to do. And that's the Jared Goff thing. I mean, I was thinking of Jared Goff with this, and I'll just keep saying it, is that Jared Goff is the most underrated quarterback of the last whatever number of years because he does what he's coached to do. And it's not wowing a lot of times, but it certainly wins a lot of games and gets a lot of yards. And that's what McCarthy has to do. And you believe a lot more in him doing it than what you hear from Caleb Williams from this piece. And you wonder, even just in general, I mean, is this like the equivalent of when a team is staying in a hotel and somebody from the opposing fan base pulls the fire alarm at 2 a.m.? Like, this has to be right now, this article coming out. And trust me, the Bears, they've seen it, they've read it, they know exactly what you know about it right now. this has to be a distraction for Chicago right off the bat. I mean, this is something that the broadcast leading into the game should be talking about what Tyler has written here about Caleb Williams, because that dysfunction, I think we all knew that it was pretty bad, but it's really bad. Get out with Goff, man. Okay, when's the last time your team had a number one offense? Let me know. Was it 1998? Jared Goff did it last year. My point is that if JJ McCarthy plays like Jared Goff and then adds a playmaking element to it, he's going to win a lot of games. And that's why Ben Johnson going from Jared Goff to Caleb Williams, as you see from this article, could not be farther apart. Goff is the type of quarterback that understands an offense and all the details and how to run it. And Ben Johnson could put in whatever he wanted and have his quarterback do it. What I'm saying is you want to emulate that with JJ McCarthy. And that's the reason that Chicago was not able to succeed last year, is that that cadence, I didn't even realize that was the cadence, just ready, set, go. I mean, what? Like that's the cadence is a huge deal. I know this sounds silly, but it really is a huge deal, because Patrick Peterson told me one time, I asked Patrick about blitzing. I was like, how do you a good corner blitzer? Like, is there anything to that? Because he had really good success rates of corner blitzing. He said that he would listen to the broadcast version of the tape. And this is why you make the Hall of Fame, right? As Patrick will someday. He would listen to every week the cadence for the opposing quarterback, and he would study it. And I think maybe even write it down of how it was used differently, how they mixed it up, what situations they used, what cadence, and then he could time it really well. If you're just saying ready, set, go, I mean, wow, yeah. And then the offensive line gets blamed, right? And the coaches get blamed and everybody else. But when it comes to Ben Johnson, there's going to be it seems like a reason why he was the way that he was. And there's going to be a big spotlight on this relationship now of, is Ben Johnson the guy that got through to him? Because Caleb Williams has said that he wanted to be coached harder, but then nothing from that perspective of what we just read sounded like he actually wanted to be coached harder. So how is he going to respond to that? Chasing FX says, don't believe the article. It's only one side of the story. Well, it's a three-piece, three-part article that is enormous and covers all the bases, but it has not been all released yet. And plus, if the guy dropped the article trying to get paid, well, that is true. Just like myself, as someone, Tyler, who runs his own business of reporting on football, he does need to get paid for it to keep doing it. So that is absolutely true. But getting the perspectives of a bunch of coaches that were with Caleb Williams last year, and that's what they say about Caleb Williams, is pretty darn significant. And if you're saying, you don't believe it, I think you should probably just look into Tyler's work, especially with Sean McDermott from last year, where he was, people said the same thing. And then Sean McDermott confirmed that exactly what he had reported was true. So maybe before you say stuff like that, like look into it a little bit deeper. Tyler has been as good as it comes when it's diving into situations like this. So, all right, let's see. Yeah, look, Tyler's been doing this too long, guys. If Tyler is reporting that coaches told him this, then they did. That's just the fact. Again, if you want the smoking gun for that, go look into the Sean McDermott stuff. Coaches told him this. I know they did. I've known Tyler for 15 years. Like if he's writing that they did, then they did. I promise you they did. So, all right, your reaction. What is your reaction to this article where, Caleb Williams just getting blown up here right before the Minnesota Vikings face the Chicago Bears? And wow. Yeah, Sam, I'm not surprised. All of Chicago's stations should be bringing him on to talk about this, because you know what here's what I think about this, is that a lot of Tyler's article, from the pieces we read, again, there's a lot more to it. He's diving into the draft process and how they landed on Caleb Williams, which was basically, there was no other option. It was just Caleb the entire time, which was curious to me. See, for me, a lot of this is like, yeah, that was weird. like when you looked at the resume for Drake May, for Jaden Daniels, and you looked at how they played going into that season, and the fact that Caleb was like the lock dead 100% no skepticism whatsoever number one overall pick was kind of weird because he hadn't played as good as Jaden Daniels. In fact, he was nowhere close. I would say he didn't even play as well as Michael Penix. In fact, he lost to Penix, and Penix outperformed him. And May had maybe similar issues with turnovers and some risky plays, but every bit of the physical traits that Caleb Williams had, and it never seemed like there was any even discussion that anyone else should get into that conversation for number one. So a lot of the things that he's reporting, I think, match up with the smell test. But if we're applying it to this game against the Vikings, this to me, I already thought that there was a massive amount of pressure on Caleb Williams going into this game and on Ben Johnson going into this game. If you are going to handle training camp like a lunatic, and you're going to get your players hurt because you're doing full tackling, which is I've never seen before in a practice. If you're doing full tackling and you're pulling the offense off the field and you're doing all this crazy stuff, then it better work, right? Because the soft approach to Caleb Williams, the we'll do whatever you say, Mr. Williams, here's your red carpet, which is what it sounds like. And again, I think that some of these coaches in these quotes make themselves look as bad as Caleb Williams, because it seems like they're regretting the fact that they refused to coach Caleb Williams, or not refused, but felt like they had to tiptoe around him to the point where they couldn't tell him no. Because, I mean, one, they had no other option for any other quarterbacks. Who was their backup last year? It was like nobody, right? It was someone they couldn't even play. That's why teams get a veteran backup in case you have to play that guy, and for somebody to work with the young quarterback and tell him this is how it's supposed to be. But it sounds like he was uncoachable, but it also sounds like they let him do whatever he wanted to do and dictate how they coached, which is not something you want to be doing as an NFL head coach. I think Kevin O'Connell shapes his coaching to his quarterback, but he's not telling 22-year-old JJ McCarthy, you tell me how it's going to be. You tell me how the cadence is going to be. That's definitely not something KOC is doing. He's coaching it. This is how we're going to do it. So Ben Johnson, I think, is similar to KOC in that way, where it's a lot of details. It's pretty heavy intellectual stuff. You can't not work on it outside of football and have it be okay. So is all that going to work? Is him playing Nurse Ratched or something in training camp with Caleb Williams, does that get through to him? Does that change the way that he viewed last year as the entitled number one overall pick who thought he would just figure it all out by scrambling around, which is a lot of what we saw? And will he connect with Ben Johnson's details of his offense, which we know works? If you have seen the Detroit Lions over the last couple of years, we know it works. Or is this just going to be them butting heads? And there's another anecdote about Caleb Williams just like walking by an assistant coach who was trying to say something to him coming off the field in that horrendous 6-3 loss they had last year against Seattle. Is that how he's going to be for Ben Johnson? Because that relationship could explode really quickly if it is like that. I mean, wow. That is quite the bombshell that Tyler Dunn just dropped on the Chicago land area going into this article. Sam says in Chicago chatter, I think there's a lot of concern about Caleb, not just Tyler's article. Think if the Bears lose, there will be real questions about the Bears drafting him. No, I think that is completely true. Is that's what I mean about how there's more pressure. Now, there's a lot on JJ McCarthy for sure. Like on the road, it's his hometown. He's going to have lots of friends and family, and they've built this team, and they're supposed to win, all that sort of stuff for JJ McCarthy. There is a lot of pressure for any time someone is a first-round draft pick and they're making their first start in the NFL. Oh my gosh, yeah. But not in the same way with Caleb Williams, who already I think was more under pressure because now Minnesota, like we got a big media market here. I think we're 15th or something biggest in the country. And, Vikings fans, there's a lot of them, and they're going to react to whatever McCarthy does. But I think that Chicago, as a media market and as a national talking head, uh, I guess, I don't know, attention magnet, is the Chicago Bears, as you've seen, because they always get the benefit of the doubt for some reason every offseason and all the attention. Well, that can work against them. And if Caleb Williams doesn't win this game and plays poorly against Florida's defense, I don't think that the next day, Stephen A. Smith and everybody on TV, Dan Orlovsky, I don't think they're going to go on and be like, boy, that fire zone blitz that Brian Flores ran against Caleb Williams. Good job, Brian. Thumbs up to you. Hey, well done, Javon Hargrave. Swim move. Like that's not what they're going to be doing. They're going to be screaming at the top of their lungs that Caleb Williams is the biggest bust who's ever walked the earth and that Ben Johnson couldn't get through to him. I mean, you're right about it always seems like way too much to say, wow, this could come off the rails early, but it could. And I think that's even more for the Vikings. I mean, not that they need more motivation, but even more benefit potentially to playing the Bears here in week 1 is that chance to just right away light it on fire. Jordan says, oh, yeah, since I know Tyler Dunn, how reputable are his sources? How likely is it to be true? It's true. Yep. Yeah, I've known Tyler a really, really long time, and I've known his reporting for a really long time. I gave him a hand starting Go Long TD. We're from the same place. Trust me. If people said this to him, then they said that to him. Like if it's in the article, then that's what was said. And it happens a lot with Tyler, actually, because he is very, very good. The article took months. This wasn't just like one phone call. He's been talking to me about this article for months. Like, wait till this comes out. Just wait. You're going to see, like, there's some crazy stuff. I'm like, okay. And I've been waiting for it. And he's been working on it for a long time. But anytime somebody drops something like this, Pablo Torre's kind of dealing with this with the Belichick stuff. People always say, is this fake? Is this what I mean? And look, it's a hard world these days in the media to figure out who's telling you the truth. I get that. So it's fair. But Tyler has done a lot of reporting, including, by the way, on Aaron Rodgers and the Jordan Love situation and behind the scenes with that. But he takes his time with it and he works at it for a long time. And that's how you end up with something like this. Plus, he's been covering the NFL for quite a while. But this happens to him every time. Every single time he drops a big story like this, some of the first reaction is like, is this all fake? Is it made up? It's not. And again, so I'll tell you what happened with Sean McDermott. This was a Tyler Dunn article. Tyler wrote last year that there was an instance where Sean McDermott, if you didn't see this story, just to really paint the picture of this, Sean McDermott used 9/11 in a team meeting to motivate his players. And players were so upset that they were like walking out of the meeting and like losing their minds that their coach could use 9/11 to make this point. And of course, the first thing that came out was, oh, this is made up. This can't be true. There's no way anybody would ever do this. And then Sean McDermott acknowledged it, said that that's what he did, said it was a huge mistake. He framed it really badly. And I think that Tyler did an article with him, later on talking about like changing his style of communicating with players and stuff. So, yeah, if you go look into that one. But I mean, also like, doesn't this just match everything that we know? That's what I think, is that this really matches up with everything that we have seen from Caleb Williams. Did you guys watch Caleb Williams last year and think, yeah, that looks normal? That looks like an NFL quarterback should look. That looks like all the QBs I've seen in the past? No, it looked discombobulated. It looked like players were frustrated. It looked like he didn't know what to do with the football, and he thought he could just kind of scramble around and make it up. And that's where Chicago's going to go one way or the other after this with Ben Johnson. It's either going to click in for Caleb Williams that he just can't run around and figure it out like USC, or that relationship is a powder keg that's going to explode at some point. How about that? Tony says, no wonder GMs were so cautious with Shedeur Sanders after what happened with Caleb. Absolutely. And look, I mean, your instinct for that, I think, is right on, because if you're talking about Caleb Williams, what they're putting aside is all that that you saw shades of at USC because the talent is there. With Shadur, the talent's not there. I mean, he's nowhere near as physically gifted as Caleb Williams. And sometimes certain podcasters would try to say, look, guys, the NFL, if they saw a good quarterback, they would jump on it no matter what. I mean, this league drafted Jameis Winston overall. Google his instances in college. And they drafted because they believed in the talent. So if they're not drafting the guy until the 5th round, then they are really scared of something with him. And especially if he blew off the meetings. If you're going to blow off the meetings, are you going to go to the meetings in the NFL? Like, what are your chances? But Chicago seemed like, and here's what happens with, a market like that and a situation like this is Chicago was so pressured into drafting Williams that even despite the red flags, there was nothing they could do about this, it seems, because the fans had already decided Caleb Williams was their quarterback in that process. The word generational should be put in a rocket ship and sent into the sun, by the way. We do this with every sport. This guy's a generational. This guy's a generational. Like a lot of times it's not, because it's hard to be that person. It's hard to be LeBron James. It's hard to be Tiger Woods. There's only one of them. And so we just call Trevor Lawrence that. He doesn't turn out to be generational. So we just call somebody else that. And now we do it with Arch Manning. We learn nothing, right? And maybe at some point, I don't know, Arch Manning might still be good. It could be okay. But at some point, somebody might draft Arch Manning number 1 because they just feel like they have to. And that's what it seems like with Caleb Williams, because I just looked at Williams as being incredibly gifted, but Daniels and May played better football. Penix played better football. So did JJ McCarthy. He didn't play well, and especially under pressure at USC. And his receivers were frustrated and guys were open. He didn't throw it. It's the same thing that's happened in the NFL. So I think you're right that, they're like players like Caleb, that's going to be something that they think about, especially in, this NIL era and where players are coming out as celebrities and superstars and everything else already when they get here. JK says Ben Johnson won't stand for it, so he'll either fix or it seems like he's the type to move on. He seems to have the power. Well, that is the big question there, is how long would they have to give the Caleb Williams experiment? Now, the Jets, so I think the Jets ran into the same thing with Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was a guy who was just crazy arm talent and really fun, but sort of similar of this Mahomes problem, where Patrick Mahomes has created this fallacy that someone else can be Patrick Mahomes. And unfortunately, they cannot. So I think a lot of teams and analysts would see a guy, and I liked Zach Wilson, so I can't say I was, in a different spot with this, but, the exciting arm angles, off balance throws, deep down the field, he's going to be the next Mahomes, right? And so I think that a lot of people fell in love with that idea with Caleb Williams more than what he actually was at USC. Jared says they let the kid dictate the team, right? I mean, to me, that's the point of this, is like the coaches are trashing Caleb Williams, but they're also, I think, just sharing their regrets with Tyler Dunn in this article where they're saying, like, we let him do all this stuff and we tiptoed around him and we just said, yes, sir, we'll change the cadence. Yes, sir, we'll run your USC offense. Well, I guess what? There's a reason Lincoln Riley will never coach in the NFL, because his offense wouldn't do anything in the NFL. It's a college offense. It's not an NFL offense. And, with some of USC's results recently, maybe it was the quarterbacks and not Lincoln Riley with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray anyway, but you can't run a college offense in the NFL. You just get killed. It's way too predictable. And that's what they were last year. And then they fire their offensive coordinator and they blame him. But it also sounds like when they say Shane tried too hard to implement USC stuff, it does sound like that was a problem, which makes you wonder if Ben Johnson saying, it's my show, it's my offense, you're going to run it the way I said. But Courtney Cronin on the show earlier today, she talked about how it still didn't look smooth offensively to the end of training camp, and that Ben Johnson still looked like he was being driven to total madness. This is a fascinating situation. yeah, let me circle back to some answers on the that FanDuel question of the day. Got a little jacked up here. Mr. Mayor's got 150 yards for Justin Jefferson on the FanDuel question of the day. Traveler says if Caleb continues to not put in the work and the Bears struggle, Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles will both be gone. Yeah, that is a real question there, right? Is because Ben Johnson didn't draft, are they just going to repeat history again here, by the way? Like it was always the coach. Let's see. It was Trubisky was drafted by John Fox, and then Matt Nagy got fired because of Trubisky. And then Justin Fields. How did this go? Oh, yeah. No, right. No. Let me get the order right. John Fox drafted Trubisky, then was fired. Then Matt Nagy comes in, and he can't win with Trubisky and get him to be any better than he was. So they draft Justin Fields. Then he gets fired. And then Eberflus comes in, has Justin Fields, can't get any more out of him. Then he gets fired. And now, like, how many times does this have to happen to this team? But they needed somebody, I think, who was going to rule with an iron fist right away with Caleb Williams. They also needed, this is why you do it. This is why you get the Sam Darnold. This is why you do it. And this also does test Kevin O'Connell's theory a little bit about organizations failing players, but maybe it did. I mean, maybe they're kind of telling on themselves a little bit, right? So if you guys have other questions, by the way, and some of you have, I will also answer them. But this topic. Also, there was football yesterday. How crazy was that? If you don't want to get thrown out of a game, don't spit on someone. That's what we learned. How about that? Just the start of the season begins with one of the best players in the league being thrown out for spitting on someone. National Football League, welcome back. CeeDee Lamb can't bring in, the ball right there in his chest. Yikes, Dallas Cowboys. Well, that was a crazy start to the NFL season. And the reason we're live a little bit earlier is because I was like, Chargers Chiefs, it's on YouTube. So maybe YouTube won't work once that game starts, but also I want to watch. And I'm sure you guys do too. So anyway, Friday football. Why not? Digits says, any idea if Big Nickel package is essentially replacing Big Nose tackle as B-Flow's new strategy for run support? I kind of did last year where the 3 safety, Big Nickel, 3 safety, whatever you want to call it. I think also this is maybe another reason that they got Jeff Okudah and they like him because Okudah is the size of a safety. And if they have to play a lot more nickel with Harrison Smith limited or out, that Jeff Okudah is a really good tackler. That there's reasons to wonder if he can do it from the coverage perspective because that hasn't been his strong point in his career and he's committed too many penalties, but he is a really good tackler. And that helps them kind of almost have a big nickel on the field at all times with an extra guy who could tackle like that. Murphy's pretty good at it too. Rodgers has a decent history as a tackler, but Okudah's kind of like that. Yes, I do think though that their idea for stopping the run is that Cashman's good at it. Pace is good at it. They can get Turner on the field. They can have Metellus in the box, that they've got enough guys around. It's not like Jerry Tillery or Jonathan Bullard was dominating, or even that those were the biggest guys in the world. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I do. Whew, what a start to the show tonight. I was just, I was getting ready. I'm like, okay, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about tonight? I got Kahler talking about this subject soon. And we recorded earlier, so she hadn't read the article yet, but, right along the same lines of this discussion. And then I start reading this and I'm like, whoa, okay, that is a little bit more than I expected. Mr. Mayor says that's insane. I wonder how honest the team front office and former coaches were with Ben Johnson when interviewing. That is a great question. I wonder if people did tell Ben Johnson, well, if you're going to do this, then you've got to do it differently than than they did it before. Like you have to be the disciplinarian. You've got to be the bad guy with Caleb Williams, or this is not going to work. Traveler, how did Rams win a Super Bowl as soon as Jared Goff left? The Rams winning a Super Bowl when Jared Goff left does not prove that Jared Goff is not good, because they had a totally different team. Go look at the 2019 or 2020 Rams versus 2021. They also won a playoff game. 2020 had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. 2021 had one of the best. They got Von Miller. They got OBJ. It's a different team. And Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback also. So I'm not sure that they were in the Super Bowl with Jared Goff 2 years before that. I don't think that's a very good argument when they were one completion away from the Super Bowl just 2 years ago with Jared Goff. He's a great quarterback, man. You can fight it if you want, because I know you guys don't like Detroit, but it's right there. As I said, how many number one in the league offenses have the Vikings had? And they've had a lot of great quarterbacks. Jared Goff did it last year. He was fifth the year before that. He's really good. And the point was more of that's something I think that proves, if you just do what you're coached to do, that you can get a long way in the NFL. Can you win the Super Bowl? That's hard. As you were saying, like Matthew Stafford threw a no-look pass in the Super Bowl to win the game, basically. That's different. That's a different level of playmaking and dynamic elements to his quarterback play, arm strength, arm freakish talent that separates Matthew Stafford. And if he could do all the same things as Goff, then he's going to be better. Yes. But if JJ McCarthy plays like Jared Goff and leads the fifth and first best offenses in the league the next 2 years, you guys will build a statue of him and tattoo him on your face. So when you come in and say Jared Goff's not that good, I promise if he was your quarterback, you'd be going nuts for him. So, but that wasn't even really the point. Jim says, do you worry about the secondary as much as I do? We saw, Dallas pick on Adoree Jackson last night. The starting secondary, well, it depends a little bit on whether Harrison Smith is out. The starting secondary, I don't think that there should be a ton of concern about. Now, if they've got to play Okudah 50 snaps, then yes. Theo Jackson, I mean, it's weird to have a lot of confidence in a guy who's played so little, and yet I feel like they do. And I do, because I've just seen every time he gets in, he plays well. And every time he's in practice, he plays well. I've never seen him not play well. But, that is something new. And if they have to play, so here would be a little bit, if they have to play Josh Metellus at more of a traditional safety spot, not sure how much I love that, because Metellus, I think in his role is where he's at his absolute best. And that's where you wonder, could you see, somebody like Tavier Thomas or Jay Ward get in the game at times? If Harrison Smith is out, how are they going to manage that? Because I don't think you want to limit what Josh Metellus can do. But as far as the starting outside corners and the starting safeties, I think they're in pretty good shape right now. When we look back even to last year, where, Bynum is obviously good, but they're starting Stephon Gilmore, and he just had showed up 2 weeks before that and hadn't been that great the previous season. So this team, I think, is actually better at the corner position overall than they were last year. And Shaq Griffin is basically the same as Jeff Okudah. And Shaq played really well, but very similar type of player. I think I'm curious about it. If there's a big concern, it's that. But when you go around the league and you compare it, I think it's a little bit of, there's several different ways that Vikings fans prepare themselves mentally for games. This is what I've learned over many years of this, where there are some of you folks who are like, we are going to win and it is going to be 50-0. The Chicago Bears will never see it coming and it's going to be over by kickoff. And then there are other of you who are like, we're going to blow everything. I'm worried about everything. Miles Price, Theo Jackson, any tiny weak point on the team, it's going to cost them. And I think that those are the two different ways you kind of mentally, some of you, prepare yourselves for these games. The secondary has kind of become that, where it's like, well, you don't really 100% know with 1,000% certainty that Theo Jackson is good or that Jeff Okudah is going to work. So it's terrifying. And the Bears do have a good passing game. I'm not making fun of you. I'm saying that I think that this is why, is because everything else is so proven on this team. You except for what, like Dallas Turner, but the rotational outside linebacker, man, I'm not sure about him. Like that's because it's a good team. Traveler, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciated that. Really appreciate that. So let's see. TL says Caleb Williams was my top pick to fall short of hopes. Yeah. I thought going into the draft in 24 that he was the scariest one, probably, because of all of this stuff that at USC. And he's sort of a little bit of the first, like what would you call it? Like the first generation of anointed college players. Remember when Jordan Addison took $1 million to go to USC and got destroyed by everybody in the media? Like, how dare he? All this stuff. And now that happens every other day with guys taking this money. But Williams was the first one to be a rich NFL player. And then it was also pretty clear that his disposition when he got to Chicago was, these guys don't know what they're doing and they're going to screw me up. Because when you read the Seth Wickersham thing, him wanting to come to Minnesota, and hey, if you're going to the game, it's just maybe a suggestion of some sort of signage to indicate that Caleb Williams actually wanted to be a Viking. That'd be funny for you. Anyway, so it was pretty clear that he was going into that situation already feeling like this organization doesn't know what it's doing. It's going to screw me up. I have to tell them what to do. And it just seemed like a marriage made in hell between a coach that didn't have any sort of iron fist in Matt Eberflus and an offensive coordinator that wanted to do everything that Caleb Williams was going to be completely comfortable with. At the same time, though, if he can't get the play calls in, this is why Kevin O'Connell obsesses over this. If you can't get the play calls in and you can't line guys up right, you're not going to succeed. And it was clear that he wasn't doing that last year. Let's see. Can't quite pronounce this name here, but I'll just call it Valiant. Says, between all the weird red flags, it was easy to call Caleb an odd duck before the draft, but I distinctly remember him being called all kinds of things, as you pointed out. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people who were wondering what the guy was about, and it's not just when it comes to like the painting of the fingernails. Like, that doesn't mean anything. It's just, okay, whatever. It's just putting color on your hands. But there was a little bit of a disposition to him that bothered me from a body language standpoint. And you know who else has this is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's the same way, where the guy's body language can be horrible at times. You're just like, are you leading this football team? Or are you just kind of here to show up for work? Or do you think it's everybody else's fault? Like, what's your deal? Because when you see, and this is, I have to tie these things back into McCarthy. When you see the way McCarthy operates on a play-to-play basis and how he handles his body language, it's an A+, his body language. If he misses a pass, he kind of slaps his hands and it's on me and daps a guy up or whatever. If a play didn't go completely right, he walks over. I saw him do this 50 times during camp. If a play, even if it did go right, I can't say for sure, but after his time would be up, with the reps and Sam Howell would go on, almost every time McCarthy would walk over to Jefferson, he would walk over to Addison, walk over to Naylor, talk about different things like leadership type of stuff that you expect from a quarterback. And I didn't see that in college from Caleb Williams. And Traveler says, he was emotional after they lost the game and he was sitting in the stands crying. Yeah, I mean, there was that. Yes, there was that. What was strange about that for me was that it was just a regular game against Washington and he had sort of treated it as if he had just like lost the Super Bowl or something. And that was kind of crazy to me, the way that he acted. Speaking of going crazy, we got the dog. It's going to be time soon for the dog to eat. Now he's going crazy down here. I don't have his toy down here. Uh-oh. We might be in trouble. Well, I've got Kalyn Kahler and my interview with her about this subject coming up soon, but I want to keep answering your questions. And we got to hold off Buddy the dog from it's coming toward dinner time. He's so good on this. I mean, we've been talking for over an hour here and hasn't said a peep, but he just realized, wait a minute, I'm hungry. Mr. Mayor says these red flags are a lot different from criticisms that we heard going into the draft. Yes and no. I think the personality, though. The personality was definitely one of the most criticized things. There he is. There's Buddy. That was one of the most criticized things. But I don't know if it ever sounded at USC like he was the one running things. But when they lost games, they would hide him away from the media. Like, the entitlement there was kind of clear. The way that they coddled him at USC was kind of clear. Reminder before I get to more of your questions and comments about our friends at ZipRecruiter. I know that some of you folks either own your own business or you are in management where you're doing hiring, and it can be a heck of a headache. You get lots of resumes from people who aren't qualified, end up overlooking some of the better candidates. It is tough, but it's not hard when you're using ZipRecruiter for your hiring needs. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you and fast, and you could try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. So easy, you have to try it. They've got smart technology that helps you find great candidates for you quickly. With the also with the invite to apply button, you can reach out to your favorite candidates. So there's lots of ways you can use ZipRecruiter to work for you. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So try it for free with this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Whew, what a day. Tony says, question now is if Ben Johnson could turn him around. That is the question. Here's the other question, though. Was Caleb Williams ever as gifted as they said? I mean, we've seen the arm talent for sure, where he can... Buddy knocking down my picture here in the background. You've become a distraction on this show, animal. I'll feed him shortly, I promise. But I want to continue to get a couple more of your comments in before he wrecks the entire studio. So the question is really, was there as much talent there as it was made out to be? It can't all be personality. One thing that we have to remember is that Caleb Williams isn't very big. And I know that sounds like old school, like, oh, we've seen quarterbacks that aren't that big succeed like Drew Brees, but how many have we really seen make it work? So you have to find ways to deal with the fact that he is not all that big and probably can't see the field in the same way as a lot of taller quarterbacks. Like JJ McCarthy's pretty tall. He's I think he's about 6'3", 6'2.5", whatever. In cleats, probably 6'3". Hovering around 6 foot, there's just not that many quarterbacks who have made it work. And I think everybody overlooked all that stuff because of the hype, and in Chicago anyway, and they overlooked it because of his wow plays, which were as spectacular as anybody else in the NFL. And Traveler says you can't change personalities. And, I think that that's true. But sometimes the one thing that you might give Caleb Williams benefit of the doubt a little bit would just be you can grow up. You're right that you can't change personalities, but you can grow up. And that is certainly possible. Sam says that Chicago radio had McCarthy's dad on today. Well, if you have that, let me know which station that was. I'd be interested in listening to that. Jared says if the Bears win week 1, then Caleb is the next Manning and Ben Johnson fixed him. And if they lose, he's the biggest bust. That's right. That is absolutely how it's going to be treated, especially because it's the only game on TV that night. That is just the nature of the NFL anyway, but it really puts on both of them. It puts so much pressure on them going into this game. Nick says, speaking of Wentz as the backup, I absolutely love that JJ called him Coach Wentz the other day. Shows Carson is taking on the mentoring seriously. I had the same thought when he said it. I definitely had the same thought. And you think about Carson Wentz, I don't think of Carson Wentz as being that old. Like I think of Aaron Rodgers as being old. Like, all right, man, if you're the same age or older than me, like you're ancient. But Carson Wentz, I'm like, no, that guy just got in the league a few years ago, right? And actually, it's like 10 years ago. And he had a lot of experience. He is in his 30s, and to a 22-year-old, that probably does seem like Coach Wentz. But I felt the same way that one of the reasons you go get Carson Wentz is because he has all this experience, and he can talk to JJ McCarthy about how you win football games in the NFL. He's won a lot of them. He wasn't perfect, but he's won a lot of games. Sam Howell couldn't tell him those things. Sam Howell hasn't won games in the NFL. He hasn't been to a playoff game. He hasn't been through the ups and downs or anything else like that. And the fact that Wentz already seems to be connecting with him that's important. Surly says the Eagles did not dominate a broken Cowboys team. First game or not, things are being shook up. Eagles won by luck. CeeDee Lamb messed up. If not, the Cowboys would win. So for the first game of judging the Eagles, I don't really know what to do with that. The one thing I was looking at yesterday where I was like, oh, got that one, at least for 1 week. we all get our opinions, we all get our predictions. I made 50 of them before the season, and we want them to be right. It's just like with the draft. We all make our takes and we want them to be right. And the one for me is that Saquon Barkley is going to average more like 4.3 yards per carry and not like 6 yards per carry again because of the regression monster. And that was kind of happening. Their offensive line's not the same as it was last year. Mekhi Becton doesn't play for them anymore. So maybe there will be some differences. And I mean, Dallas should have won the game. CeeDee Lamb's got to catch that football, but I don't know if that tells us a ton. Like, it was a weird game. A lightning delay, and your best player gets thrown out early on. I think the Eagles are more vulnerable this year than they were last year, but I also think that it's one game and we've got a long way to go. They didn't look invincible. I agree that they did not look invincible. Chasing FX seems like both the coaches and Caleb were at fault for the 2024 season. Now we get to see how this season plays out. Totally agree. That there's a lot of telling on yourself in that article as well. Well, I think that Tyler got a lot of those coaches to kind of open up about what happened. What you hear in their voice is a lot of regret as well. There's some blaming him. Now, where I think you'd be reasonably upset is when it gets spun toward the coaches didn't try to help me watch tape. I mean, that just doesn't match the smell test. NFL coaches who have had success before, like Shane Waldron, just didn't ask you to watch tape. No, man, we just go figure it out, Caleb. We're just going to sit here. Like that doesn't sound like that's now watching tape correctly, coaching him really well. I mean, I don't know. You could get into that, but they didn't help him at all. That was another red flag that sounded like, oh, they're just ramping up the excuse train there. TL says, Caleb is Caleb. The blame is on the team. Thanks for the super chat. I think that they do have a good amount of the blame from reading that article. And, I suggest reading the entire thing and not just the parts that I read, but there's a lot that I think that they could point them at the mirror with that for their coaching. But if he wasn't buying the coaching, they may not have felt like they had any other choice. If he wasn't watching film, if he wasn't studying, if he couldn't get the play calls in, then they may have felt like they had no other choice than to just be like, oh, okay, I guess we'll have to do it your way. Cause what else are we going to do? We can't have you walk out there and not know any plays. Tony says Caleb might get overwhelmed by the complexity of his new offense. Very, very positive. And that sounds like exactly what's been happening. It really does. It sounds like exactly what's been happening in Chicago is that Caleb Williams has been overwhelmed by the complexity of that offense. So the second spitter, Zoomer Kev with the Seinfeld episode. Very good. I shot you 99. No way the Vikings lose Monday if the Bears are this dysfunctional, right? Right. Well, the 1-6 Bears once beat the Vikings that were, I think 5-1 in 2016. My first game ever at Soldier Field. So is it possible? Oh, yes, it is possible that they could win. But this certainly everything that's come out of there, what Courtney said, and I was reading some of the comments from earlier about the Courtney Cronin interview, which, after this is over, go check that out, where it was like, are you just bringing on guests to hammer like the Bears? I'm like, no, I just asked the questions. And she sounded extremely skeptical about whether this would actually work. Surly Vikings says, continue to talk about Williams is questioning our defense, not our offense. JJ is the real question. We do know his ability, period. We have no history. He's never played. The thing is with the Vikings defense, they did get lit up a little bit last year by Caleb Williams. So I don't think that there's any like lock dead guarantee that Caleb Williams can't play against Brian Flores' defense. He was able to make those plays, and that's why he was the number one pick. He made 4 or 5 plays that were just, whoa. I think he finished that game with something like 5 big time throws. So it's always possible that he could escape some of this pressure and make plays. And that's why the idea of Ben Johnson is if he plays in rhythm at all, then he's going to be pretty good. And he has not played in rhythm, but he has done the other stuff. When it comes to McCarthy, I mean, yeah, we talked a lot about that and what we expect from him in this game. And that's Williams is going to be the main centerpiece story for all of the broadcasts and all of the media leading into it. So I think that's a good thing for JJ McCarthy. Sam says, what I love about McCarthy is that he was known to be Mahomes like big play quarterback in high school, but chose to go to Michigan where he had to learn to play within structure. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good. I mean, everyone is Mahomes who's going to the NFL in high school. Like everybody, you should. There was a Arch Manning clip. Did you guys see this? There was an Arch Manning clip where he's running away from high school defenders, and he's like 6'4" or something, and these little kids are running after him, like, "Come back, come back." I mean, you should look like that in high school. Go to Everson Griffin's Wikipedia and look up his high school stats. He like ran for 3,000 yards and had 12 sacks or something. It's just insane. Yeah. Derrick Henry in high school was legendary. So yeah, you should look like that. But you make a good point that JJ McCarthy has been at places before in his career in Michigan and now here that sort of scream out to, I want to be coached right. And if you buy into the coaching, I mean, you're halfway there. And then you got to make the plays. And that's where we'll find out about JJ McCarthy. So, okay. Well, a lot of interesting stuff there, guys. And 73 hours to go. We're almost there. We got a whole day of football to watch, and I'll definitely be reacting to that. Feed your pup. We'll talk amongst ourselves. I know you guys are capable of doing that for sure. He's upstairs playing. He'll be okay for a couple more minutes. And then I got this interview with Kahler. And when I bring that to you, which is really super interesting, the discussion about the 2024 draft class, when I bring that to you, I'll go feed Buddy for sure. So, anyway, let's see. Sean says, Justin Jefferson's production. Yeah. 225 yards. Probably not. That was the FanDuel question of the day. Just a reminder before I bring you the Kahler interview, and go read what Tyler had to say. But before I bring you that reminder, the FanDuel question of the day, which is Justin Jefferson's over under is 77.5 yards with Jalen Johnson still limited in practice. How many yards for Justin Jefferson on Sunday? TL, the NFL is hard in every way, hard to become great, hard to stay great. That's the thing, right? If you don't do the work, it's never going to happen because you're not that much more talented than anybody else. Let's see. Oh gosh says, how did you like Dallas versus Philly? Oh, now he's got his toy. Okay. Now this is going off the rails with Buddy. He's got the squeaky toy. How did I like the Dallas Philly game? I thought that unfortunately, the delay really took the wind out of the sails for the game because the way it was rolling along, it was incredibly exciting, tense, big plays, big moments. The teams were not liking each other from the very start. I was like, football. And then, the delay happens, and that was frustrating. I got to see the end of the Lynx game last night because of that, but that also was frustrating. The Lynx coming up short against the Aces. But as far as both teams, I think showed kind of what they have and what they don't. I mean, Dallas is not going to be a joke. They got rid of Micah Parsons, but they've got a lot of talent. Anybody, including the Vikings who plays Dallas, although by the time they play them, it might have completely melted. But anybody who plays Dallas, they are going to have to play well to beat them. Dak Prescott, I thought, made a lot of throws in the game. He just needed guys to catch the ball. But you could also see, remember a couple years ago where the Raiders had a pretty decent team and they just lost every game because McDaniels was freaking out and Jimmy Garoppolo was struggling and everybody was bickering. And so I guess you could see that happening for Dallas if they get off to a slow start. But I didn't think Philly looked invincible last night. They looked okay, but I don't think they looked like as good as they were last year. It's also week one. But, there were times where they limited what Saquon could do and they forced Jalen Hurts to run the ball and they forced him to sit in the pocket, which the Vikings will someday have to do when they face them. Overall, though, good football game. Great way to start. I'm excited about tonight's. So I gotta bring you this interview that I've been teasing because I want to make sure you can all see that before the game starts and before YouTube probably melts into 1,000 pieces. So let me tell you about a friend of mine who has a great podcast that is centered around lawyers, judges, the law, and a lot of very interesting stuff. Who is a great supporter of this show, the Beyond the Bar podcast, which is hosted by my friend Denisa Tova, who is a huge supporter of this show, her and her husband Glenn. And she does her own show that dives into the real lives of people within the law. Beyond the Bar, it's super interesting. It's not deep in the weed lawyer talk, it's more about what the real lives of lawyers and judges are. I love Law and Order. I don't know if that's exactly the best representation of the real lives of lawyers and judges behind the scenes. So Denisa is unearths that on her Beyond the Bar podcast, finds out what makes lawyers laugh, what their work-life balance is, how they're dealing with this AI legal landscape, and what they tell new lawyers. If you know people who are getting into the law, might be very interesting for you. And Denise also runs a forensic retirement lab. So if you're a divorce lawyer and your client's 401k and IRA was around before the marriage and now it's all mixed up, she can help you with her settlement language lab. So go find Denisa Tova, that is Tova, on LinkedIn. Send her a message about hearing her on the show and ask for that settlement lab if you're a divorce lawyer. And if you're interested in the law and the people who do it, check out that Beyond the Bar podcast. So this was a really, really fun, energetic discussion. Jay Deasy says 5 for 80. I could see that. I could see 80 yards for Justin Jefferson. But really, really fun discussion. And Kalyn Kahler is there in Chicago, and she has done tons of reporting herself on the Bears and on the NFL, behind the scenes with quarterbacks. And also, we talk a lot about the Seth Wickersham book and how Sean Payton revealed this formula that he made up that actually makes JJ McCarthy look really good. So here's my conversation with ESPN's Kalyn Kahler. All right, we welcome back to the show from ESPN these days, Kalyn Kahler, and she has taken a break from taking down the NFL Players Association and looking into some of the more unique sides of the National Football League to talk about the 2024 quarterback draft class. We've got Caleb Williams versus JJ McCarthy. Next week, it's JJ McCarthy versus Michael Penix. Kalyn, I think that this is one of the biggest stories of the 2025 NFL season, is that we're really going to find out after this year how that 2024 quarterback class that was historic in its 6 draft picks in the first round, I think we're really going to find out how this thing plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Caleb, I live in Chicago, so I'm like the most excited to see like how Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson do together. And I don't know, I've talked a little bit about it on like other podcasts and radio shows and things. And I feel like Ben is absolutely the right hire and the right coach. But, again, I mean, this is not a unique take. He should have been the coach a year before. Like, the fact that the Bears did that is just still so infuriating and so unbelievable. And like we were talking a little bit before we recorded this, like Zach Keefer had a story in The Athletic about, why how to why organizations keep struggling to find quarterbacks and to develop rookie quarterbacks, which featured heavily Kevin O'Connell, and a quote that he gave to, was it Rich Eisen or someone? I might be getting that wrong. A quote that he gave about how organizations fail rookie quarterbacks before rookie quarterbacks, or young quarterbacks fail organizations. Which I think I generally definitely agree with that sentiment. And it's interesting. It was interesting to like see Kiefer sort of dive into that because, um, there was a part in the story that was like, I think it was Peyton Manning saying like teams should just realize like this isn't the coach for our quarterback right now that we have, and either do something about that and hire the coach that is, or wait until you have the coach that is to get your quarterback. But I think obviously in the case of Caleb, it was like his talent was like too appealing and he was too good to like let someone else have him, even though I'm sure everyone with the truth serum in the organization knew they did not in fact have the correct coach for him last year. So yeah, and I'm really excited to see JJ McCarthy play real NFL football. Because we have not. No one has. And now Monday night is going to be it. So it's going to be really exciting to see that and to see what happens with them.
Yeah,
for
let's talk
sure.
more about nature versus nurture when it comes to this quarterback conversation with Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy, because when they were both drafted, it was kind of a similar narrative in both cities where it was like, well, you can't do much better for this guy because they had gotten Caleb Williams some receivers and he had some better weapons and they had used the Carolina pick. They weren't the worst team in the NFL that previous year. And they forgot that Matt Eberflus might not be the best guy, and also that Shane Waldron might not be the best guy. But then there's a part of me that says, I get all that, but it's not like Shane Waldron had never been in the NFL before and never had any success with any quarterbacks. And he was just a big old dummy who didn't understand football. And they just said, you know what? Hey, random guy walking on Michigan Avenue, why don't you coach Caleb Williams? Like, this guy had some success before. That's why they hired him. And when Caleb Williams attempted to run his offense, he looked pretty lost. Like he didn't know where to go with the football. Like his first instinct was to just scramble away and get sacked, which was actually his first instinct in college. He looked a lot like a worse version of Caleb Williams in college. And this is what makes this discussion with McCarthy and Williams so interesting, is that they're very opposite. Williams is physical tools, it's freakish playmaking, and then it's trying to harness all that. Where with JJ McCarthy, and it's not that he's not a playmaker, like he is, that's in there, but it's more of the processing, it's more of the mental stuff, it's more of the leadership traits and all those boxes that you want to check with the quarterback position, and then enough physical tools. But the coaching gap is humongous when it comes to Kevin O'Connell having 2 years now with JJ McCarthy, or a full season and now going into year two, versus Williams, who came in and then now has to learn an entire new offense with Ben Johnson. But I still think that if Caleb is actually good, that you overcome these things. Yeah, I believe a little bit less than Kevin O'Connell does that it's always the organization's fault.
Well, and also I think too, like, well, first I have several thoughts, but first thought is I always love seeing, it's going to be more interesting now that we know for sure that Caleb and his father loved Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. It's going to be even more interesting to see their post-game interaction. I mean, I remember last year, what point of the year did they play at Chicago?
At
Um,
Chicago was late part of the season.
okay, because I remember after that game, they had like a long interaction post-game too. And it was like, then like Seth Wickersham had not written his book where he exposed that, Caleb and his dad were actually very seriously not wanting to play for the Bears and thinking ways of how they could blow it up and thinking, "Oh, we really like Kevin O'Connell," and all of that. That was before he'd even officially written that, but, like, people had heard things, and so when you saw their interaction post game, it was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Which is why there were the rumors too. I think we were texting about this of like, are they going to trade for Kevin O'Connell, the Bears? Like, are they going to? Is that what they're going to try to do here? Which honestly would have been so awesome. Like, I'm upset that that didn't happen and probably was never even considered, but it should have been considered if it if it really wasn't. Like, the Bears really should have been picking up the phone to be like, "Hey, can we what do you guys think? Like, what can we do?" Like an in division trade for a coach would just be so awesome. Um anyways, uh I think the year of JJ McCarthy getting hurt actually, 5 years from now, I think it's going to have been helpful to him actually. Obviously like there's value in Caleb seeing what NFL defenses are like in real life, but also he was sacked a league high, what is it, 68 times, 60 something times
68,
last
yep.
year. Like that's not good for a lot of reasons, injury reasons. I mean, he didn't get injured, so that's thank God. Like he was healthy, that's okay, that's good. But like not good for injury reasons, not good for like mental processing reasons, all of that. And I think, I mean, obviously the Bears made a lot of changes to their offensive line. Interior offensive line is completely different. Like, um, but they didn't name a left tackle until literally what, Monday this week. And I mean, we pretty much knew it's gonna be Braxton Jones, who was the left tackle last year, but you can't really say that they improved at that position, which is the most important position on your offensive line. And so that is a concern, I think, for the Bears going into this season, and still a concern for Caleb Williams. And like, they did a lot of work on the offensive line. Don't get me wrong. But the most important piece of the offensive line, they did not change. So that is something to watch, I think, as far as Caleb's development this season. But one thing we wanted to talk about, which relates to processing, is and Seth Wickersham, who is ESPN reporter, who's just came out with a book about quarterbacks, which I haven't actually read yet, but I've been really enjoying the excerpts that he's released on ESPN. One of which relates directly to the conversation that we're having, which was actually about Bo Nix, another member of this 2024 quarterback class. And it's about why Sean Payton wanted Bo Nix in particular, which grain of salt here, name someone who has ever talked about a quarterback they really wanted that they didn't get that sucked. Like no one does that. So grain of salt for all of this that like Sean Payton looks pretty good right now because Bo Nix had a good rookie season and they were a good team and they made the playoffs, right? Like, okay. So, but the whole and this came out obviously after the fact, but like Seth was in the moment talking with Sean leading up to the 2024 draft. He was like having conversations with him, and Sean revealed to him what he calls, what is it called? QB processing. His quarterback processing formula, which is how it's this formula he came up with, which is how he measures how a quarterback is going to be able to do that thing that is the hardest thing to predict, and the thing that is going to determine your success the most, as we just talked about with rookie quarterbacks, is your decision making. Are you going to be able to do that quickly enough? And that is what separates quarterbacks, bottom line. So Peyton thinks he has figured it out. And honestly, I'm a real believer. I'm going to explain what it is, but I'm a real believer in it, despite the fact that his math, as they say, is not mathing. Like his actual formula is sort of like arbitrary, because what he does is, okay, he looks at rate of negative plays against total dropbacks. And part of the story is Peyton was obsessed with Patrick Mahomes, which again, name a coach who's obsessed with the quarterback that ended up sucking. We'll never hear that
I was
story.
obsessed with
Okay.
Ryan Leaf.
Like, right. Like, we're never going to hear the story of like, oh yeah, I was convinced he was going to be great. I was so mad we didn't get him. And then he ended up being terrible. Anyways, so he's looking at rate of negative plays against total dropbacks. So that's sacks, fumbles, and interceptions rated against how many actual passing attempts that they had in their college career. And then he's looking at their completion percentage, which is not factored into the algorithm. And then the algorithm is him adding the adding up the rate of negative plays against total dropbacks. So like in the instance of let's see, of Caleb Williams here, who has the worst of the quarterback class, first round quarterback class of 2024. He has got the worst processing score of all of them because he's adding it up. So you want to have a low score here. So he had 735 attempts, 83 sacks. That's 11.2. He was sacked on 11.2% of his dropbacks. 32 fumbles. That was 4.4% of his dropbacks or fumbles. 14 interceptions. That was 1.9% of his dropbacks ended with interceptions. Add that all up for a score of 17.5. Okay. So that was the worst score. Now, what did we see last year? We
A lot of
saw
negative
him
plays.
getting sacked at a league high rate, some of which you could say is on the offensive line, but a lot of that was on Caleb Williams and his play style, his processing style. So I thought that was really interesting. And then, of course, Bo Nix in here. Let's see. Like, this story is written as if Peyton was going after Bo Nix no matter what. Like, even if he'd had the first pick, he would have picked Bo Nix.
Which is
How it was
definitely
written.
not true, because he was
Right.
when he was a media member, he called Caleb Williams a generational prospect and said every
Right.
team should draft him.
Right.
So there is, well, let me stop you right there about the math part, because, I love the analytics and stuff. I think that this
Right.
is some very kind of bizarre back of the napkin math
Yes.
that also has the exact right idea.
Yes.
Now I mean, you have to factor in how many touchdowns the guy threw, how many yards, how many, all the accuracy and all
The
right.
positive plays, yeah.
Right. But I think that the negative plays over history have correlated better to success or failure in the NFL. You shouldn't get sacked in college. I mean, you're not facing Jonathan Grenard in
Right,
college. You're not
right,
facing the elite players of the NFL. You're
right,
facing guys that you should be able to get away from. You shouldn't be fumbling the ball like crazy. You shouldn't be throwing interceptions because at the next level, they're better at intercepting the ball, sacking you, and causing fumbles. So how are you going to? And also, it's probably telling that you're not getting rid of the football, which, as we know in the NFL, 2.5 seconds is the key number. I remember Tom Moore, the legendary quarterback coach, always talks about 2.5 seconds or less, that everything in the NFL has to happen then. And if you're fumbling the ball and you're getting sacked and things like that in college, well, those guys routinely have 3.5, 4 seconds to throw the ball in the pocket. That means you're not seeing something. And that was my biggest concern about Caleb Williams coming out, was watching him at USC. I thought, well, this is super fun, but the ball's not, it's just not coming out. And if that doesn't happen in the NFL,
it's not gonna
you're
work.
right.
Mhm.
You're gonna get killed. And I think so. Sean Payton is sort of barking up the right tree. Analytics
Yes,
people love pressure to sack ratio, how often you get sacked when you get pressured, for the same kind of reason. And I also think that pressured PFF grade has correlated pretty well. And Caleb was terrible at his pressured PFF grade. JJ McCarthy was actually one of the better in the NFL at that, or in college football at that, going into the NFL. I think that there's something there. It's just, we're never
yes.
going to truly be able to pin this down, but I think he had the right concept.
Yeah, and I asked somebody who does analytics that I know to be like, what do you think of the structure of this formula? And he was like, well, in one sense, Peyton's arbitrarily weighting a subset of stats and assuming they'll just add up into something meaningful.
Right.
And he said, generally inadvisable. But on the other hand, he said, given the fact that traditional passer rating ignores those, um, quarterbacks are largely responsible for sack avoidance. And he said, Peyton's intuition to include sack rate is a really good one, which we just talked about. Like, so
Yep.
I do think like it's really interesting. And also, I just had never read or heard about, and I'm sure teams have private formulas that they don't give us. And I'm actually kind of surprised that Peyton would like come out with this, even though it's like, it's not like he invented something that crazy, but it's like, you know, how teams are, everything is a state secret. So I'm sure teams have much more complicated algorithms that they are using that are similar to this,
Yes,
but
for sure.
I don't know what they are necessarily. So it was really interesting to hear someone be like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking at. And here's exactly why I like this guy, because Bo Nix had the lowest score, 2.3 of this processing formula. Then it was Penix,
Like in a good way, lowest
4.45.
score in a good
Good
way,
way.
you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lowest score is your best processing
Yeah.
score per Sean Payton's formula. It was Bo Nix. Then it was Penix, who somehow only had 31 sacks on 1685 attempts. Nuts.
Insane.
Um, and then third place, JJ McCarthy, who 32 sacks, but about half the attempts at Penix, less than half, 713 attempts. Then you had Drake May with a score of 10.5, 69 sacks and 942 attempts. Then you had Jaden Daniels with an 11.9 because he was sacked a lot. But as we talked about too, he got way better at that at LSU. So obviously he played what, 5 years? So like his majority of his negative plays were coming earlier in his college career than later,
Yes.
which
We talked
shows.
about that via text, not on the show. So
Yeah,
if you're
sorry.
not,
We were texting. We were texting.
right.
And then last place was Caleb Williams, 83 sacks and 735 attempts in college. That's 11.2% of his dropbacks in college he was sacked on. So I don't know. I love it. And I actually kind of want to go through like every year's quarterback classes. Like if I have free time coming up, which LOL, but like if I did at some point, like I really kind of want it. Like if I had an assistant, I'd be like, can someone do this, please? Like I would love to go back and just like score like, you know, every class that we've had in the last decade and just see what's turned up. Like, obviously, it's not gonna be 100%, because Jaden Daniels was amazing last year, and per Sean Payton's formula, didn't have a great score and, like, had a lot of negative plays in college. So, that's sort of an outlier for you, but it would be really interesting to go back and, like, see how this has panned out where we with players who are a little bit older, so we actually know what's happened in their NFL careers so far.
So what's funny about that? I mean, with Jaden Daniels, the fascinating part with him was that he got sacked a ton and actually wasn't really a very good quarterback until he arrived at LSU. And the biggest question about Daniels was, okay, was it that he had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas? I mean, it's just unbelievable receiving core there. Was it that really caused his success? And maybe he just had a great circumstance and that was really it. And it turned out the answer was no, because he's
No.
unbelievably gifted.
Right.
But he did improve greatly in that area, in the pressure to sack and in the sacks. But it wasn't until he was 23 years old, which really makes me think about Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, a number of other
Yeah.
quarterbacks, Sam Darnold that didn't work out, where usually the connection, and this kind of ties into O'Connell, but also this Sean Payton idea as well. You don't I don't think learn to process and get rid of the football on the field at the NFL level immediately. You kind of are who you are there, and then you have to learn on the fly. It's very, very challenging, especially when you're getting hit like crazy. And Caleb Williams by PFF did lead the NFL in sacks that were responsible for the quarterback. That it was they gave him 17. I'd probably give him more than that, but
Yeah.
they're usually cautious with that statistic to give it to the
Who
quarterback.
was like do
But
you have
it
that in front of you?
well,
Who came after him?
interestingly though, Brock Purdy was second, and then Bo Nix was actually third on this for
Mm.
the sacks he was responsible
Yeah.
for. But he didn't really
Okay.
get sacked that much because the ball came out pretty quickly. But
Right.
I think with quarterbacks learning to see the game at full speed, you need a lot of practice most times. I think CJ Stroud's brain works crazy quick. I think that Brock Purdy's brain works crazy quick. But somebody like Caleb Williams, I think that if he was starting at 23 or 24, might have had a very different experience. And that helped Jaden Daniels. If you took Jaden Daniels out of
Yeah.
Arizona State and threw him in the NFL last year, there is absolutely no way that that guy succeeds. But Anthony Richardson is still like 22 years old. I think he's like the same age as JJ McCarthy, and he's been in the NFL now for 2 years, and he's had a bunch of injuries and all those things. And so I think that these two things can sort of be tied together, that you don't have to be in college if you have freakish skill. You don't have to be the best processor, but you're probably going to need more experience. And hey, Bo Nix, by the way, early in his career at Auburn was not good. And then it wasn't until he was 23, 24 years old where he started to emerge as a much better quarterback. So I even wonder about the development of the human being
Yeah.
that's playing. And I agree with you that in hindsight right now McCarthy wouldn't have played anyway last year. They won 14 games. But in hindsight, I think it's way, way better that JJ McCarthy is here now starting for the first time as a guy who's been in the league than if they had just said, you know what, we love what we see in practice. Why don't you go out there and lead the 2024 Vikings?
100% agree. And yeah, he's 22. Anthony Richardson is 23. It's crazy. These
That is
guys are
crazy.
like they're so young. Yeah. Yeah, and if I were gonna add something to Sean's formula, um, I would definitely well, I always stand by this even though it's not 100% true, and, like, I've looked up things before to try to, like, prove it out, but it doesn't work. I don't know what my number of, like, dropbacks would be that I would wanna see, but, like, I love a four-year starter, I just do. I don't know why it personally, like, if I was a GM, I would be, like, adding that to my quarterback criteria of, like, I want someone who has played 4 years of college football and, like, has seen, a significant number. And that's not always there's plenty of quarterbacks that have been great with 3 years as a starter or less, but, um, yeah, I would that would be part of my formula personally, I think.
So actually, before that draft, I talked to a couple of scouts, former scouts, so they could talk freely about their
Yeah.
experiences. And one of them said the exact same thing. Like one of them was very skeptical. It was really interesting because one of them was very skeptical on JJ McCarthy because of the dropbacks. And if you actually go back and try to find a comparable quarterback with that few dropbacks and just statistically touchdowns, interceptions, whatever. It's kind of hard to find someone who's drafted as high as he was. Usually they have, bigger
What about
numbers.
Mitchell?
Trubisky, yeah, I mean, he would be no, yeah, he would be in there. And Mark Sanchez was another one because I was
Yeah,
trying to find comparables.
right,
But then another scout that I talked to absolutely loved JJ McCarthy because he said that what he saw was a lot of NFL type throws. And when he's scouting college quarterbacks, he throws out all the bubble screens. He throws out
sure,
all the we're going to spread everybody and do some crazy stuff and just get the ball out of the guy's hands. And Bo Nix had way more of that on his tape. And so one of the reasons that his snap to release was so quick, one of the reasons he got so sacked so few times was that he was throwing, I think it was 20% of his passes were screens. And that was what made Penix unique to me is that Penix pushed the ball down the field, but also never got
right,
sacked.
right.
And yet, though, he didn't have the same mobility as McCarthy or Nix or Daniels or May or Williams. So, can you win as a pure pocket quarterback? So then he runs a 40 and it's really fast. And I was like, oh, actually, he is fast. I
What?
mean, this
Right.
that was so interesting
So hard.
leading up to that draft. And we still really don't know. So I would love to know like your expected order of how this plays out. And with
Like,
none of
over
us know.
careers,
Yeah,
career-wise.
how about we just do 2025?
Okay, 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, who's gonna have the best year of these
Who's going to
guys?
have the
Okay.
best season from that class? You want me to give you yours and you can think
Better
about or
rank.
mine and you can think about it?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah, you go first.
I mean, I think Jaden Daniels, obviously, like he's already
Yeah,
proven it, goes to the NFC Championship. That guy's incredible. Terry McLaurin
yeah,
didn't get traded. He's going to be fine. I'm still skeptical a bit on Cliff, but, okay. Like he deserves to pimp that home run from last year. Number two, and I don't think this is a homer pick, is JJ McCarthy because I know what he has.
yeah,
I know what he has in front of him,
right,
and it's funny because the percentage of the population that has actually seen McCarthy doing football stuff is 0.0000001%,
right,
and it's me, and it's like
right.
seven other reporters that were
Right.
out there practice for 50 practices over the last 2 years. But having seen all that, I have a good amount of confidence that he can run this offense. And if you can run this offense, you're getting open receivers, tons of weapons. Their second tight end is good. Like that's how far their second running back is good. Their offensive line is better. So I would go with him there. I want to go Penix next. I think he's got a lot to work with there. Zach Robinson was with McVay, and I don't think that it worked well with Kirk, but I think it'll work well with Penix. So I'm going to go Penix third, and then May fourth, and Nick's fifth,
And Caleb
and
last.
Caleb last.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
But my skepticism on Nick's is in part because a lot of his best play was against a run of tanking teams and then 4 touchdowns
Yeah,
against Kansas City not playing their
right,
starters. I don't know
right.
about the ceiling there, but maybe I should put because I'm so skeptical on him. Maybe I should put Williams up because May still has nothing to work with. I think May can be good, but he's got nothing to work with in New
Yeah,
England.
yeah. I mean, that's really correct. Like their roster is really hurting. I was gonna say the same thing kind of about like Penix. I'm looking up who do they play? Who did they play last year? Like he was good, but I feel like he played nobody.
Carolina game was
And
amazing, but they were the worst defense in the NFL. Yeah,
yeah,
that
like
helped. Yep.
let's see. Who did they play late? Let's see. Yeah, Carolina. Oh, they did play Washington. That one went to overtime. Okay. New York Giants were not great last year. Yeah, he had the 3 games at the end of the year. So it was Giants, Commanders, Panthers.
Yeah.
So, um, and that's interesting because that's tough to predict what will happen this year. I have a question. McCarthy, did he just play in the one preseason game
Yeah.
this year? Okay. So, I mean, we saw nothing essentially. That's what I thought. I was like, did I miss
No, it
something?
was
Did I miss
7
any
passes, I
more?
think.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. All right. So my order will be, let's see, definitely, yeah, Jaden Daniels for sure. Although I do get worried that he scrambled a lot last year. And obviously, like not a new opinion, but I think they're gonna be a little bit smarter about that this year. So I think that'll be important. Daniels. Then I'm gonna go I agree with I think JJ McCarthy simply because of everything around him in Minnesota for sure, even though we don't have the evidence of like seeing him play NFL football, but like Vikings roster, Vikings coaching, all of that. Yep. McCarthy for sure. Then
This is where it does get hard. It really does get tricky because if you said to me though, if you said you thought Caleb Williams was going to
I
be
know
second, I don't
I
think
might
that's
say
crazy.
Williams. I might say Williams third. I'm torn between Williams or Nix for third because I do think Caleb and I think the Bears overall, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think the NFC North is like too competitive and good for there to be like a way for them into the postseason necessarily. But I think they're going to be a lot. I mean, it's not that hard to be better than they were last year, but I think they're going to be like a lot better than last year. And because Ben Johnson has talked a lot about how he said they're further along than they were like his first year in Detroit, but he's talked a lot about how this is a process of getting the offense to the point where he can run things the way he did in Detroit last season. Like they're not going to be able to have the level of sophistication they did in Detroit last year because they don't have the veteran offensive line, the same quality of veteran offensive linemen as he did in Detroit, and that's so important to what he's able to do in that offense. And then they have to learn it. It's going to take time. So I think yeah, that's why I think Caleb I'll put Caleb third. And then I'll do Penix. Oh no, sorry. Nix, then Penix, then May.
I think that this is so up in the air that if you
Yeah,
said Caleb number 1, okay, maybe that's a little crazy because Daniels was so good last year. And
right.
historically, if someone is that good, usually you're not talking about falling off the edge of the table unless there's a serious
Right.
injury like Carson Wentz once upon a time, but very rarely other than that. Uh, but if you said second because the ceiling is there, the playmaking is there, and this is where the Ben Johnson factor comes in. And this Flores versus Ben Johnson matchup is so freaking interesting for week 1. I think you're going to have a really good sense for this right away. Like, what happens with week 1 is we can't wait to find out everything. And then the games happen. And you're like, well, it was just 1 week and we can't judge
Right.
everything. But I think you're going to be able to judge a lot of how well he took in what Ben Johnson was selling to him because we know it works. Like at least we
Yeah.
have there's like when you do scientific experiment, you have to have a control. Like this is the control. We know that this guy's
Yeah.
offense works.
Yeah.
So if you can't do it, then you're bad. Like
Yes.
period. The other
And
the other
we
Chicago
know it
quarterbacks.
works against the coaches in the same
Yes.
division. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes. Right. The other,
Yeah.
I mean, because you could have said, well, Matt Nagy doesn't know what he's doing. Eberflus doesn't know what he's doing. Waldron doesn't know what he's doing. On and on and on. And you could have maybe made a good case for that. This
Yeah.
guy, you can't. Now, he might be a
He
psycho,
knows what he's doing. Right.
but his
Right.
offense works.
Right. And I just have to say that I've appreciated so much how like every time he has a chance to talk, he's like, it's not good enough. Like I love that. It's amazing. It's just so good. It's like, yeah, like cool. That's great. He's like he, the standard, whatever. But like truly he is enforcing what appears to be a different standard and I don't want to describe him as mean, but it's like he's not happy with where they're at. He said some nice things every now and then throughout camp, but it's like very clear that like he's like, no, like this is not good enough and we need to get better fast. I think that was like a direct quote. Like we need to get better quickly. So I've just really appreciated hearing that from him and like that attitude that he has. It's been
That
interesting to watch.
is also a juxtaposition with Kevin O'Connell that sparks my interest when we're talking about nature
Right.
versus nurture. It's like, well, Kevin O'Connell is the like if you have a bad rep, he brings you an orange slice and
Yeah,
he puts his
right.
arm around you and he says, "It's okay, JJ. It's all right. We're going to make it through it. I love you. I care about you. Please just do the next rep the right way. Here's what you did wrong." And Ben Johnson climbs to the top of a ladder and
Right,
elbows Caleb Williams off of it or
right,
something. It's
right,
just like the
right.
massively different approaches. And I wonder about like and this is when we talk about this, do organizations and coaches fail quarterbacks? We treat every one of them as if they're just pass or fail, bust or success, franchise or not, as if those are the only things that you can ever be as a quarterback. And every one of them is an individual person who probably needs individual things to be understood, right? Like Steve Young, because I'm a million years old, comes to mind with in Tampa Bay early in his career. He just scrambled around and took a bunch of sacks and did stupid stuff. And when he got to San Francisco, they coached him extremely hard on every single detail. And there might be a correlation there with Caleb Williams because he needed that. He needed to understand every single step of the quarterback position and couldn't really be treated with kid gloves and oh, everything that you do is okay. Not that I think O'Connell is like that. I'm kidding. I think he's incredibly detailed. And I think the difference with O'Connell and most quarterback coaches and most coaches in general is that when he explains something to you, I did a story with him in 2023 where I had him teach me some stuff and
Cool.
I was like ready to go play. I understand one
Yeah,
hundredth of what NFL quarterbacks need to understand.
right,
But I
right.
got it. Like in his office, I got it. And I think that he is able to really, when he sits you down and explains something, you're going to get it. And that might be the thing that we cannot factor is how that relationship works out with the communication of what you're looking for.
100%. And I think like, yeah, I mean, every I don't know JJ McCarthy. I've never talked to JJ McCarthy or like, know his personality to like know what type of coaching he responds to or like wants. But there was all the reports last year that like Caleb wasn't, Seth Wickersham again had reported that Caleb like wasn't understanding how to watch tape
Right.
efficiently. I think Caleb came back and was like, well, no, I know how to watch film, but like I don't know how to like I mean, there's one thing of just like watching film, but like you do need to know, you need to be taught how to watch film and like what you should be looking for because otherwise you're just going to be wasting hours and hours and hours missing whatever you should be picking up from what's in front of you. So, um, that was something that came up, and there's been other reporting that, and things that I've heard that like he wanted to be coached harder and that, you know, um, and Shane Waldron, I remember when Shane Waldron was the offensive coordinator with the Bears, like I asked some of the Bears players, like, well, what's he like? And they're like, well, yeah, he's like really nice. And, like he was, which is good for some players. That's good. That's what they need. That's all they need. But for a young player who, uh, has what am I word am I looking for? Like goals. Like Caleb has big goals. He wants to be better than Tom Brady. I think he said that. Like he has not shied away from expectations. He's created and stated expectations for himself and he needs a little bit more and wanted a little bit more and I think like the last staff probably was just like, "Oh, we don't want to mess him up. Like we don't want to, freak him out because I do think back to the Vikings, Brian Flores, Tua Tagovailoa, that is very well known now that Tua's talked about how that did not work for him that relationship and Flores also I think I don't know if he's talked directly about Tua but he's been very reflective of like his own coaching style and has made some changes with like how he connects to players on his defense and how he builds relationships in a way that he didn't in New England, in a way that he didn't in Miami. And so, yeah, I think it's like you have to find the balance of like what does the quarterback need without going too far. And I think Ben just like probably is like this is just all so bad that I don't really care. Like it needs to be fixed and we're just going to do it. And everyone in Chicago agrees with that. Like I don't think anyone's going to be like you're being too mean. Like, no. They need they needed a kick in the butt and they got it.
There's definitely a line. I think. Call it the Patricia line, where you're just
Yeah,
insulting
yeah.
people, or the Zimmer line, where you're just insulting people
Yeah, Zimmer
constantly.
too. That's so true.
Like, this isn't a roast. This is watching film and
Right.
trying to right. So,
But also organizations will do that, like, it's so funny to watch hiring because somebody will be, like, really mean, and the next
yes,
time they hire someone who's really nice, and
every
then
time,
it just
every
flips.
time.
It was like Mike Zimmer, mean. Kevin O'Connell, nice guy. Matt Patricia, mean. Dan Campbell, tough but nice.
Yes, nice.
Cries in public. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. No, you're absolutely right. And with the Vikings, they needed that. Like they needed someone. Everyone had been beaten
Yeah.
down, and that's what happens. The mean guy, everyone beats everyone down and gets fired. The nice guy, he sort of lets the inmates run the asylum or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
like the dog or the tail wag the dog. And so then he's
Right.
not hard enough on them. I think actually with Shane Waldron, if I'm not mistaken, the claim to fame was Geno Smith, right? Which
Yes.
Geno was 30, so he already knew all the football stuff. He probably needed someone or preferred someone that would just be nice to him and treat him as a peer as opposed to like I need to teach you
Yeah.
how to play football. So there's so many different layers to this. Let me ask
Shane
you.
is in Jacksonville now, which I just realized.
Oh,
Didn't
I
I did
did not
not
know
know
that.
he was there. What's his job? Passing game coordinator.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's where you fall to after working with the Bears.
I still don't know what a passing game coordinator does
I
after
think I
asking
think it's
a lot
mostly
of people.
I think it's mostly game planning. I think it's like you
Okay.
stay away from the actual players. You're in an office working on like certain third down and seven, like for that week or something. I think I'm not 100% sure either. I don't really know quality control exactly what that job does either. But
Right.
before we run here, I would love what you think is going to happen on Monday Night
Monday?
Football between the Bear. Are you going to be there? Are you coming?
I am gonna be there. I'm
Oh,
excited.
good. I'll see you then.
Yes, I'm sure we'll be seated hopefully near each other.
I'm sure we'll be eating the finest cuisine in the Chicago press box.
Hey, actually at the preseason game, there was some good stuff going on in there,
Maybe
but
maybe we
my
hammered
tummy
them
did hurt.
enough. Maybe we like
No,
railed on them enough.
Kevin Warren made a huge difference in
Oh, okay.
the food quality at Soldier Field. However, it still hurts my tummy. It's better though. Like, it looks better, it tastes better. There's way more variety. There'd be, like, real salads with, like,
Oh, okay.
several ingredients in the salads, like, there'd be, like, radishes and, like, fennel, orange slices, like, there's actual, like, interesting variety of salads and interesting variety of food where it used to be just, like, Polish sausage every.
Yes. I also don't know what fennel is. What is that?
It's like a well, I think it's actually a root that grows in the ground, but it's a, like,
Hmm.
seed as well that you can, like, season things with.
Huh.
But I do think it is a plant that's I mean, obviously, if it's a seed, it's a plant, right? Because plants grow from seeds.
This was about Monday Night Football at the beginning, but I don't know
And now
how
we're
we got to
talking about
fennel.
fennel.
Fennel sounds
Okay,
like a defensive tackle, like or
it is
fullback,
someone's it's like it's a last name for
like
sure.
Eddie Fennel, a 1980s fullback.
Actually, wait, hold on. Just
There
because we were doing
probably is.
I went on Defectors Remember Some Guys football stream yesterday, and one of them did a stream about just entering animal names and seeing, like, which players came up. Oh, I just went on Pro Football Reference and I typed fennel and no one came up. That's shocking. You know why? Because Pennell is a last name.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
see. That's what we're thinking of.
It's a little shocking, I guess.
Mike Pennell. Yeah, he, like, plays somewhere. Defensive tackle. Yeah, obviously. Um, yeah,
So the
okay,
game
anyways,
that's happening there.
the game. You know, this is interesting. I actually didn't think of my prediction until right now. I think the Vikings will win. I think it will be close. I think it's gonna be a close game. I think the Vikings will win, and I think probably the downfall is gonna be some offensive turnovers by the Bears. Maybe like a sack fumble, strip sack, maybe a costly interception in the red zone, something like that, I think is maybe gonna be a deciding factor. Maybe Levi Drake Rodriguez gets up in
He's gonna
Caleb's
play.
face.
He's gonna play.
He's gonna play. Let's
I
go.
mean, look, they traded Harrison Phillips away in
Yeah.
part because Jalen Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez were so good during training camp. Your guy, if folks don't know that you wrote the Prospect X series, you've been writing that for a while, and Levi Drake
Yeah.
Rodriguez was your guy, and
2024.
seventh round draft pick, kind of out of absolutely nowhere, Texas A&M Commerce, I think was the
Yep.
college.
Yep.
Yep,
Very good
and
pull.
he developed a lot over the offseason. He's ready to go. He's ready to play.
I think he gained a significant I don't know how much weight, but he gained weight,
Yeah.
which is easy to do when you have a training staff and a nutrition staff that I mean, not easy, but, like, easier.
They didn't
'Cause I
have that at
remember
Old Commerce?
no, when I remember he was trying to gain weight in the draft process, and mainly, I believe, by just eating a lot. He was trying to maintain and just and I had lunch with him, and he was like he got, like, a skillet with, like, I wanna say, like, 8 eggs were in it, and I was like, "Oh my god," and then he got, like, a stack of pancakes. He ordered 3 different meals and was really pushing himself to the finish line, and it was, like, almost like I was kinda feeling, like, nauseous, like, watching him eat that much food because it was clear that his body didn't wanna eat that much food, like, he was like, like, "I gotta, stomach this down," but, he's had the drive the whole time. He's been really, uh, you know, pushing to get better. So I'm excited. Obviously haven't seen him in person, so I'm excited to see how much he gets to play and if he can make an impact. It'll be fun because
That jump from year 1 to year 2 tells you how much they want it. Like, do you really
yeah,
want it? You should come back looking a
yeah.
lot bigger, stronger, and, quicker. So,
And I did hear, too, that he got a text from Quasey saying, like, "You're everything." I don't know, like, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was like, "You are, like, embodying what our team is, like, what it
oh,
means to be
wow.
a Viking." Yeah, which is, like I don't know how many texts like that he sends out, but that felt like, "Whoa, that's a good call out." That's what you wanna hear from your GM, I would say.
Sounds like the kind of text I send my wife when she's on the road for a few days. Like very intimate. But no, I really think that those guys, Jalen Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez, they just were so good in camp that the Vikings were able to do this. Like they can't keep them off the field. And then even
Right.
when Levi was in the third preseason game because he had missed a couple weeks of practice, so they put him back in there to get some reps. He just destroyed everything in front of his face. So I am extremely interested. Yeah, I mean, no cheering in the press box, but if Levi has the game-winning strip sack, I think you're going to be pretty excited. But
I would love to have a reason to interview him post game, other than to just be like, "Hey, how are you? Let's check in," whatever. I would love to be like, "No, I'm actually, like, writing about you, like, genuinely, like, let's do it." Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited.
well, I'm excited to see you on Monday night and to have football freaking back. I'm so glad we
That's
could get
right.
together, talk
Me
football, talk
too.
quarterbacks. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
Kalyn Kahler, ESPN. We'll talk again soon, my friend.
Thank you.